Homing bracket!
What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is, of course, my review for The Many Saints of Newark, which, for those of you that don't know, is a prequel to the TV show The Sopranos. Now, for those of you that don't know, The Sopranos is a TV show that came out, I believe it was 1999 and 2007. I was late to the game with that show, to be honest. I watched it 2 years ago with my fiance, and I couldn't believe that it took me so long to finally watch it. But when I did, I actually quite enjoyed it, and then I heard the news that there was a prequel. So I was excited, but at the same time feeling whelming going into this movie, because for myself, prequels rarely, very rarely, are actually good. And especially in movie form, I feel like a lot of times it can feel more fan servicey. But when I saw the trailer and everything, I was like, yeah, this could be good. Let's see how it is, though. And after finally watching this movie, which, by the way, it is currently streaming on HBO Max as of the filming of this video and in theaters. After watching this movie, I feel quite mixed. As someone that really likes the show The Sopranos, and by the way, when I saw it 2 years ago, I reviewed it, and that review, I've since marinated on the show a lot more, and I really like the show even more than when I, reviewed it 2 years ago. But I'm a big fan of the show, not as big as a lot of other people, but I really like it. And I have to say, I'm disappointed by this movie, but I also feel quite mixed about it, if that makes sense. But I want to talk about the positives first and foremost, and the main positive I would have to say personally is that the cinematography is rock solid. I did quite enjoy how it's a very dull-looking color palette, which I know kind of sounds odd that that's a praise, but hear me out. Because it's so dull-looking and it's focused on like gray and light blue, it gives this feeling of eeriness, this feeling of dread. And I think that it matches the tone quite well, because obviously the tone of the movie is going for this serious, bleak, murky look to it. And it, again, when you look at the movie, you definitely kind of visually feel that way too. So I liked that. I thought that was fitting. And then at the same time, I also liked the performances for the most part. There were a couple that I thought were more of an impersonation of actors that we saw in The Sopranos than like an actual performance. So it almost felt like a stand-up act, if that makes sense. But for the most part, I did like the performances. And I especially like James Gandolfini's son. His son, in addition to also the one who plays his younger self, because there's two versions of Tony Soprano that we see in this movie. And I liked both versions, honestly. I thought that both actors did a great job. He's not in it that much. If you haven't seen the movie, I do have to say that right off the bat, this is a movie that has Tony Soprano in it for sure, but he's not in it that much. It's all about the characters around him. And I think that that's something that on paper could work, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But again, I like the performances. I also like the production design. Did a really good job of emulating that feeling of being in the 1960s and 70s. So props again to the production design team. I really dug that. And there were a couple fan service moments here and there that I did think worked. Not so much with other moments, but there were a couple that did work. So I do want to give a shout out to that. And then also, this movie is a mess, but it's kind of a fascinating mess. And that's going to lead me to the negatives. On paper, I think that a movie about Tony Soprano and his uncle is something that could work. And the movie is trying to get it so that way we as audiences think that you do care about these characters. But unfortunately, it's done so through verbal exchanges, other characters saying about how their relationship is important. But visually, we don't really see that. We don't really see that much time that's given to these two characters and their interactions. So when things happen, which, again, not going to spoil anything for those that haven't seen The Sopranos or haven't seen the movie itself of this, but there's not really much build up to it. So when what happens at the very end happens, it's like you don't really care, unfortunately, because, again, you've just been verbally hearing that, hey, you need to care about their relationship. But, again, visually and development-wise, you don't really have that much time spent. And that's something that throughout the movie I couldn't help but think about. This is a movie that's 2 hours long, and I easily think that it could have cut certain things out whilst at the same time could have extended its runtime and fleshed out certain things, because you have a big cast. This is an ensemble cast. You would think that it's like The Godfather, Once Upon a Time in America, with the big cast. But with those movies, where they excel is that runtime is utilized to extend the characters, to flesh them out, and to really nourish into the world building. But unfortunately with this movie, the world building just isn't really there. There's attempts for sure, and it's trying to focus on all these different characters, but unfortunately they're all one-dimensional and they all fall flat. Nothing's really given to them. They're very one-note, very one-off, if you will. And that also goes into, again, the fan service. There were a lot of moments of fan service that really fell flat for me because, again, it didn't really serve the story anything, or just kind of like a wink to the audience. And that, to me, just didn't really work that much. Also, this movie focuses on a romance, and then it kind of nerves its way into another romance, if that makes sense. And I thought that both romances just weren't that interesting. Again, this movie focuses on certain things that just didn't really interest me, and I feel like it could have developed other things that would have made it more interesting. So again, I feel conflicted with this movie because there's nothing bad per se. There's just a lot of, in my eyes, missed opportunities. And Alan Taylor kind of solidifies for me that he is a great TV show director. Great. He's done some of the best episodes of The Sopranos, Game of Thrones, among other shows. But in terms of movies, he just kind of has solidified that he's not really a good director in my eyes in terms of movies. And that's fine. But that's just my personal opinion. I think he's, again, a great TV director, but just doesn't really translate well to movies. And it makes sense. And that could also be said with David Chase in terms of producing and everything. Because, again, TV shows and movies are two different forms of media. And it's like sometimes someone is not able to make that transition. I think that just might be the case here. So overall, what do I think about this movie? Again, I feel quite mixed about it, but I'm also disappointed. But I'm going to give it that sweet middle rating because, again, I do think that people should at least check this movie out to form their own opinion. But overall, I do kind of have this whelming feeling of disappointment. But I also know at the same time, I'm not really going to remember this movie in a day, which, again, is a shame because, again, as I mentioned earlier, The Sopranos is a show that over the last 2 years, it's really marinated in my mind. And, you know, I really dug it. But unfortunately, I can't say the same for this movie. And as it is this movie, I will be giving a 2.5 out of 5-star rating. So yeah, no hot sauce rating. But guys, The Many Saints of Newark, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Did you like it? Did you not? Either way, very curious to hear your guys' thoughts down below. And as always, don't forget the subscription, notification bell, and I'll catch you guys later.